So I'm going to start with a quick introduction about why this topic and my own background as well. So I'm an architect and recently transitioned towards my interest in design futures and understanding transdisciplinarity and its importance within the discipline of design and working. So today's talk, I'm going to take you guys through my own journey of how I transitioned from my own practice into understanding the role of design futures and why it's so important in whether it's academia or practice. So just my own background, I practiced as an architect for around 4 to 5 years before I moved on to now I'm teaching full-time at Habib as an associate where I'm doing research work and I'm also teaching. I'm going to quickly move through and start the presentation now. So when you talk about transdisciplinarity and you talk about design futures, there are a lot of, there's a particular research approach that is used in design today, which a lot of words which are interchangeable, whether it's called design futures, design for debate, critical design, adversarial design, speculative design, design fictions. The reason why I would go and explain these terms a little bit more is because a lot of these terms are used interchangeably at times, and a lot of them bring their own meaning. And I will share certain projects where I will expand upon where each of them sit within this. So to understand where all of these terms sit and how do they relate to each other, and there's a huge interest in design thinking, a lot in the design community right now. So how does design, speculative design relate to design thinking? A lot of people question whether it's bordering towards art or whether it's design fiction. So this diagram sort of helps explain where you can place speculative design within the spectrum of design itself and where future thinking sits. So whereas design thinking moves more towards strategy, speculative design helps us create those alternative scenarios and becomes more problem-oriented, whereas design thinking moves towards a more solution-oriented approach. So essentially, speculative design is design as critique, or it's about raising awareness, and it's about provoking questions, and it's about talking about futures in a way where we can become taken as a reflective approach towards what kind of futures do we want to head towards. And we question and we see that there can be alternatives to that as well. So my own inspiration where I picked it up from was my exposure to the Italian radicals and to the work of Archigram and Superstudio in the 1960s, where they were questioning their own discipline and questioning the role of architecture just to serve industry. And how else could it have another purpose apart from just meeting the capitalist needs of the time? The same thought and idea was then picked up by Dan and Raby, who are professors and were teaching at the Design Interactions program at Royal College of Art in London, where they picked up on the idea of the Italian radicals and spoke about questioning the role of industrial design as it was being practiced, and asked that design needs to have its own self-reflective practice where you can question what's happening around and take a more ethical lens and have an alternative role for design. They gave a manifesto, which some of you may be familiar with. I'm not going to go into detail of this, but in a nutshell, it's about design as problem solving versus design as problem finding or framing. And they wrote a book about it, which is called Speculative Everything, and highly recommend for anyone who's interested in the topic to further delve into that. So it's really important to understand when you talk about designing futures, this is a design futures cone, which is used essentially to think of scenarios and to place them within this spectrum. And it's important to understand that whenever you're talking about futures, you have to have a really good grip on the now or the present. Without that, it's impossible to make any sort of leap into the future or create any sort of scenario into the future. Now, when you project into the future, there can be a way of looking at a possible future, a plausible one, a probable one, or a preferable one. So all these different futures bring different value, and make you understand that there can be not one but multiple futures or multiple ways of being in the world. So this is a really famous quote, which by William Gibson. It talks about the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. It is really important to understand, I would bring the importance of understanding the present and our context here, especially in South Asia, and when we talk about Karachi and we talk about Pakistan, the kind of futures we may need to imagine for ourselves may be very different from someone maybe sitting in San Francisco today. Their present reality is very different from ours. So this act of futuring is not something we can rely on another for, it's something that we need to do on our own. So these projections, again, are not, design futuring is not about fantasy. It is about understanding the trends and the signals of whatever is happening around you and using that as a basis to project forward. So they're based on probable drivers and trends, and that helps us reach the plausible scenarios. I'm going to talk a little bit more about scenario planning, to which we can turn towards science fiction. Some of you may have seen this movie, 2001: Space Odyssey. It can serve as an example for us to understand how when you think of science fiction and world building, if there are any students here, these are great examples to study and look at as to what it means when you think of a world and when you imagine a world or a scenario in which you have to place a certain object which belongs to that world. And it helps you imagine what inhabiting that world would feel like, and whether you want to choose that or not, whether you want to accept it or you want to reject it. And hence you engage in this act of speculation of futuring. So you can make a conscious decision about the kind of future you want to have. I'm now going to share some very, very quick examples of projects that have inspired me, and then I will move on to sharing some of my own work as well. This is work by Dunn and Raby, which was done in 2007, and they were bringing attention to things we have in our homes right now, which are Alexa, which may be Alexa or Siri, and they were talking about sentient robots and the idea of we may be familiar with an image like this when we think of robots or something that is artificial, but now with technology progressing, we may not even be familiar, or we may not even know what are the sentient objects that we surround ourselves with. So again, this is before these things became common practice or became common for everyone at their own homes. This is another project which talks about an overpopulated planet, another one by Dunn and Raby. And they talk about our behaviors and our interactions with the consumption patterns around food and food consumption in the future. So what if there's overpopulation, and what if there's shortage of food and there's food scarcity? Would our way we digest, inhale, and the way we would consume food change? Would we have new behaviors that will emerge in the future, and how do we plan for it? What kind of objects would exist which may help us in the digestive process? What if there's scarcity of food? So this was one project in which they were questioning our relationship with that. Another really interesting firm that engages in the practice of speculative design is Near Future Laboratory. And they worked with IKEA on this. And they produced a catalog from the future for IKEA. So what kind of products will IKEA keep in their stores in the future, and how might their consumers react to that? So by actually creating this catalog, they're able to gauge what kind of products people are interested in or not. So again, you can see that speculative design doesn't restrict itself to any one format. The outcome can be in the form of a catalog, it can be in the form of a product, it can also be in the form of an experience. So this is another project which is called Smog Tasting, and it is again an urban project which talks about bringing attention to the degree of air pollution in a city or smog. And it does so by creating a food experience around it. And it talks about how a radical idea, as it may seem, but if you can actually taste smog and you could involve government agencies or other citizens and make them understand how important this issue is, and use this idea to bring attention and spur debate around this topic. So this was, again, they created Air from the Future. They created a projection around what the quality of air would be into the future and created a whole experience to engage people in that discussion. Again, these ideas could be manifested spatially as well. This is an example by Superflux, which is called Mitigation of Shock. This is a whole apartment created in the future, 2053, where there's climate change and there's shortage of food, where people are growing their own food. So this immersive experience was designed for people to feel what it would be like to face the realities of climate change into the future. Now we'll move on to certain projects that I have worked on, and all the projects that I will be sharing on are collaborative projects that I have worked on with other professionals, either experts or from my own discipline. So this was a project done for an urban space and reimagining urban space, and it was done with collaboration between architects, urban designers, and we had expert biologists and a confectioner on board for this. So the idea behind this project was the problem at hand was to reimagine and to think of urban public space and to resolve the quality of air underground. And this whole problem was looked at holistically, and it was speculated if a bacteria and algae could be used, which produces oxygen and also becomes a way of becoming edible, and it could be grown in these urban spaces to produce food, resolve the issue of food shortage, become a way of cleaning the air, and become edible in the end as well as a product. So this whole process of working with different experts, we were able to look at the whole problem holistically and in a transdisciplinary manner and come up with a solution where if it was worked on alone, just by a group of architects, the solution would have gone in a completely different direction. What if nutrition could be personalized for you? This is another speculative project which talks about a future in which our nutritional needs are catered and personalized by different products that would be in our domestic space. I will share a little video now. I'm not sure if that, I hope it works well for you, and I'm going to talk about it meanwhile. So this was thought of as in 2053, where we could have some sort of a 3D printed option of having our own food personalized and produced for us, where our health could be monitored and our food could be produced based on our specific nutritional needs. So this was, again, a 3D printer, which you could keep in your, in your homes, in your kitchen, and feed it based on filaments, which, again, would be personalized for you as well. So this is, again, something that tackled the issue of food production and scarcity of land, water, and energy, maybe into the future. Now I'm going to touch upon another topic, which is about a project that I worked on related to urban strategy and speculation in Hong Kong. This was, again, done in collaboration. It was a speculative project, but worked in collaboration with the government there. And we were looking at tackling the waste management issue, but looking at the space shortage in Hong Kong and how could we think of a radical idea and think of a probable future in which we could work with time instead of space to solve this issue of waste management. So this was a vision of creating some sort of a float lab, which would be a massive mobile structure, which could be an intelligent structure on its own, but becomes a way of dealing with the waste issue of processing waste while it floated around the island of Hong Kong. So what we worked on, this was looking at the scale of the cargo and trying to see if that could be inhabited and turned into a way where waste could be processed and turned into something as a resource without occupying space on land. And these could be floating structures which would resolve the issue of space occupancy within Hong Kong and become a way, as the waste moved towards other cities, it could be processed and it could save them both money and time. So Hong Kong is a place that has run out of landfill space and is a huge issue of how to, with waste piling up on their shores, they don't know how to resolve this issue anymore. And this was again thought of as further in 2040 or 2050, this is something they could look into doing. So this is again another project that I'd like to share, which is about creating, questioning smart cities and looking at how maybe smart sentient cities could start creating interactive fictions. And this was done as part of a think tank called the New Normal, where we were looking at urban spaces and sensors in the city and how would they start, if they start interacting with each other and take a life of their own, what kind of outcomes could come out of that? So the idea of this project was that the whole thing was designed around designing a strategy or a framework or a system which works around creating interactive fictions, which works with sensors in the city. I'm going to skip this video because I think there is a lag with video and I've been advised not to play videos. So I would now move on to some of the work that I have been doing at the playground at Habib University, which also talks about transdisciplinary design and innovation. And what we have been doing is looking at design futures and doing that with combining some methods of design thinking and reaching out and working with users and going out and talking to people. And the sentiment that we have now seen after talking to people is that people generally here do not want to talk about any radical ideas. We're so stuck on some of our own immediate issues or problems that we face. It's very difficult for us to take that leap into the future and think of potential ways that things could change. So with our experience, whoever we spoke to, there was a very small % of people who were even willing to have this conversation. And as we have been talking about at the playground, through the different courses we're offering and through the different workshops, we've realized that there's very little work that has been done regarding design futures or futuring when it comes to our spaces or even the urban context here. And it's really important to start that conversation. So we tried different methods. This is some of the student work that has been produced at the playground. And what they have done is they have reached out to the people and tried different activities with them, whether it was card sorting, showing them visuals, and working with a site in this scenario. They worked with Empress Market and they looked at all the different alternative futures that could be seen in 2050 at Empress Market. They designed objects, they designed audio tours. I'm not going to go in depth into their work at the moment, but they looked at if the government vision at Empress Market is realized, what kind of implications could there be, or if there could be other alternatives. So the question I ask now myself as well, as I'm trying to contextualize the work that I have been doing for the past couple of years, and when I try to see the local application of something like this, and how do we derive meaning from something like this and take it back to practice, is what if we start imagining these scenarios? Then what? How do we bridge this gap? Should we focus more on meeting the current needs with design, or should we focus more on imagining alternative futures? That is the question I want to leave you guys with as well. Where do you think the importance of this is? As I've realized with my own practice, that there is something that we need to do where we need to give attention to both. And I particularly talk from an academic point of view, that especially in academia, when we talk about design education, it's extremely important for us to be able to push certain ideas and to talk about interdisciplinary settings where students can sit together and talk about, look at our current issues holistically. I'd like to just end with this quote and then hand over to you. Yes, I'd like to end my talk here. I'd just stop the screen.
Thank you. Thank you very much for a very, very interesting talk. We do have some questions from the audience. And the first question is that how does one start learning and applying design futures in technology space?
So can you tell me who this question is from? Is this a student? Is it?
Expert Uzair. Yeah.
All right. So I would say that there are a lot of, if someone wants to learn more about it, there are a lot of like short-term courses that you can do, which gives you some basic tools that you can apply, but it really depends on which setting you want to take it to. And you'll have to adapt it to your particular, wherever your company sits and where you can fit it in there. So it has to be personalized after that, and it'll take some time for you to be able to personalize it to your setting or your company. Because in an academic setting, it's completely different. And when you take it to an organizational level or a corporation, it becomes very different, because then it's also you dealing with clients, right? Who are you doing this futuring for? Is it for yourself? Are you doing it for a client? So it really depends on what the intent behind it is, the exercise of futuring.
Excellent. We'll ask a couple of more questions. One is from Rafia, and she says that she sees the future as portable and convertible spaces. Keeping COVID in mind, what do you suggest should be the way to go explore materials for the future in Pakistan?
Explore materials?
Yeah.
All right. So again, I would say that with the COVID scenario, what we have tried to see is that, if you see a lot of architects are not working currently, what you realize is we place a lot of importance on brick and mortar, right? When architects sit and they think of any problem, they think of brick and mortar and they think of a build structure. And what we've realized right now is there is a lot of stuff that can happen virtually. And I think architects also need to shift their mindset about how they approach design problems. And this is a very good scenario for us to realize that. What is the importance of certain spaces? I think this is making us question certain programs, certain build structures. What is the need of that? Do they need to be rethought of it all over again? And that is something that is a lesson, I think, or a point of reflection for a lot of architects, including myself.
Thank you. Very quick question. What is your favorite sci-fi movie of all the time?
I think I love Blade Runner. For me, it's always been a top favorite. Yes.
That's one last question. And I think that's also very close to the question I wanted to ask, that which I think Abdullah asked. Are there any theoretical principles behind all this speculative design and this exploration, or is just all completely sci-fi and imagination? Is there any framework behind it, or is just completely sci-fi and imagination? You wake up in the morning and get some plans and you start doing it?
Okay. Again, I would go back to something I mentioned in my talk as well. So speculative design is a way, it's not design fiction, it's not fantasy. It's really important that it's grounded in rigorous research. What we're living right now in our present times should make us realize that even if something seems absurd or very out there, it could be a reality tomorrow, right? So any projection that you make or any alternative future that you think of is always grounded with research, with facts, which we call it signals. So yes, there is a method. You always start by signals and collecting signals in the form of whether it's current research that's happening, where does it lie in terms of technology, what is happening in the world politically, what do you see the current trends, and then you extrapolate from them. You exaggerate a bit, you put it out there, and you blow it up a little bit, but it's still grounded in something. It doesn't start from a dream, and it shouldn't.
Oh. And sorry, last one question from my side. So very relative term under the context of speculative design, right? So as a designer, whatever we do, if we do it for tomorrow, we do it for future. And so the first part of the question is that when you say, fiction and speculative design and designing for future, what exactly the future is? And does it also mean to think as an evolutionary product, or you think going on a scenic tour also?
I think what you mentioned, so every time you engage in any process of design, it is an act of futuring, right? Yeah. Now, whether it is, so there are two ways of, that's when the world building and scenario planning comes in. So when you design, when you're designing, you design for the current world, right? You look at your present conditions and you see that scenario and then you design for it. Versus when you take speculative design, you will rethink of how that world can potentially change majorly and do a world building exercise and design within that space. And that's how it sort of differs from, and firstly, you frame that setting. And another factor that comes in is it becomes about raising questions. The intent is not to produce a product that may be functional or usable immediately. The intent or the purpose of that object may be to spur debate about certain ethical issues maybe that you're seeing in design, or technology for that matter. That is a primary thing that makes it different, because it is about raising questions and not about providing solutions.
I think the last point you made is excellent, and I think I think we can of course, go in detail on that. We don't have time, but I think the last point you made is, I think for the audience also, especially if you are young designers and want to explore this space, I think Hira's last comment is really a very interesting starting point, what to look for when you think about speculative and future design. Thank you very much, Hira, for this inspiration. It was lovely to have you, and please stay with us. We have next